Well, mostly on Thanksgiving, we usually take a trip to Florida. We have a daughter that lives in Florida. She has 3 children, and we have 7 grandchildren. And it's always a pleasure to go to Thanksgiving. We try to spend Thanksgiving with them because the other children live right close, and we see them all the time. And we used to make the trip at one time. We'd drive from here to right north of Tampa. And it's 704 miles. Well, I could get up. We'd get up. We'd have the car all packed the night before. And I'd have ice chests ready. And, of course, I'd stack frozen okra, turkey andouille, turkey tasso, load that ice chest next morning, 3 or 4 o'clock, whatever time I wake up. I'd ask Mom, are you ready to go? She said, oh, yeah. I'd slip into the clothes, get in and take off. And it took us about 10 and a half, 11 hours to get to where we go north of Tampa. Anyway, we enjoyed Thanksgiving with him. And I remember when we pulled up with Zachary, one of my grandsons, he come running over. He said, Papa, are you going to make okra gumbo this year? I said, of course. He said, Papa, I love okra gumbo. Well, the whole family loves okra gumbo. When I started making okra gumbo, the smell goes through the house. And my son-in-law comes today, he said, is it ready yet? I said, boy, it hasn't started yet. I said, about a half hour will be ready. But boy, what a half hour he is. Got his bowl. He got in a big bowl. But, well, of course, I love okra gumbo there, too. Now, we love having our days over there, and we had a beautiful Thanksgiving. And just so luckily, we usually leave on a Monday morning. And Charlene takes Shirley shopping on Sunday. They spend the day in the shopping center. And I said, well, instead of leaving Monday morning, Mom, why don't we just stay an extra day and leave Tuesday? I don't know what came into my mind. She said, well, that sounds great. I said, I don't really have anything pending at home in the garden that's here doing anything. So we decided we was going to leave Tuesday. Well, luckily, we decided on that day. So Monday morning, I went to the Publix, got me a paper. I love to read my paper. We had breakfast. And I was at the dining room table going through my paper. And I was wondering, I wonder what happened to Mama. I said, I don't. So I went to the bedroom, and she was laying in the bed. And I said, what's Mom? She said, I got a pain here. I said, how bad? She said, real bad. I said, you need to go to the emergency room? She said, I think so. So I ran back into the office. My son-in-law, and they run a moving business, and the 2 boys were there. I called the oldest one, they're white. He said, come see a minute. And I brought him over. I said, I believe my mom has to go to the emergency room. I said, well, Mom, come on. Well, so he took us outside. He put us in the back seat. He got in the car, and he tried to call his mother. And she had went to Publix to pick up a few things for lunch, but she had forgot her phone on the table, so he couldn't contact his mother. But he has a sister that's a registered nurse, so he got her on the phone. And he said, what's the best or the closest hospital we could take Mama to? I believe she's having a heart problem. She said, we'll take her, as a brand new in Wesley Chapel, they just built about a hospital about a year and a half. And she said, I hear they have excellent doctors. So about 10, 20 minutes we were there. He brought her into the emergency room. He went park. Well, about a half hour, 20 minutes, I already had Shirley to examine her. And they said, well, they think, it was a heart problem. So, of course, they take blood tests and everything else. And the blood test shows the enzyme in the blood if you had a heart attack, but nothing like that. So after the examination and everything, they said, well, they didn't know exactly. They'd have to run the anaplasty where they'd go in to see if you have any blockages. And we were talking it over, and the doctor came in, and he said, I don't want to have that y'all would have to stay, but he said, it's a good chance you might be able to go home and you would have no ill effects. But he said, I'll be back early in the morning to see what your decision is. Well, they had a nice lounge chair in the corner, so I decided to stay overnight with Shirley. And next morning, 8:30, he was there, and he said, well, did y'all make the decision? So what the decision was, we were going to have the anaplasty done there. And we had it done there. Of course, she had a blockage in the main artery. There's the main artery going down here. And he said, well, a couple of days, she would stay in the hospital tonight and she could go home. So we left, we came back home. Of course, I developed a little heart problem too. I had 2 stents. But we're getting over it like I went to my cardiologist after I got back after 2 weeks after, and I had a bunch of questions. When I go to a doctor, I write out some questions. When I don't go to the doctor just to say, go to the doctor and say, oh, well, I'm not afraid to ask or tell him anything. So the last question I asked, they were telling Danny, I said, I love to drink red wine. They said, well, you think of red wine? He said, well, red wine, a glass every day wouldn't hurt you. I said, boy, I said, I'm my kind of doctor, you know. Well, you know, we both feeling pretty, but we're still not ourselves. Well, the title of my sermon today is In the Beginnings. Now, not the beginning, it's in the beginnings. So we have more than one beginning. If you turn to John 1:1, at the Passover season, I'm usually love to go through 15, 16, 17 chapters. That's always read at the Passover. Now, you can read right through them, and you don't really get the meaning. Well, for years, I've been reading through them, but still, I don't get the full meaning, what Christ was trying to tell his disciples and what they were getting out of it. But in John 1:1, I said, well, this year, I'm going to start at the beginning of John. So I opened the book to John 1:1, and of course it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And everything that was created by him and for him. So I looked at that, you know, I'd read that, but it didn't dawn on me exactly what it was saying. I remember if you turn to Genesis 1:1, it said, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So this word, exactly who is this word and what is the scriptures trying to tell me? So I said, you know, I'll have to go through back and see from the beginning for man himself when God in the Word, and God did decide to create the living Adam. So if you turn your Bibles to 126, phrase 126, first chapter of verse 26. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the seas, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on earth. In another part of the Bible, it said that Adam was made from the dust of the ground. So, you know, when God decided to create Adam, you think he just went somewhere and found some sand and some dirt and threw it in the air, whoop, and that was Adam? No, you know, God, through the Bible, he shows things that have to come from a foundation. Well, he even told Job, where was he when he laid the foundation of the earth? And if you go back in to Luke 6:48, Luke 6:48, please. He is like a man building a house who dug deep and laid the foundation on the rock. And when the flood rose, the stream beat it against the house and could not shake it, for it was founded on a rock. But he who heard and did nothing is like the man who built his house on the earth without a foundation, a shoddy house, against which the stream beat, and immediately it fell, and the ruins of that house was great. So every time God does something, he starts with a foundation. And like I said, we know he created Adam. Like I said, he didn't just throw dust in the air and say, whoop, there's Adam. No, I think he had to go through a foundation. And I love to study the body, and I love to study the workings of the body, the heart, the mind, the liver, the pancreas. And it's magnificent, like it says in the Psalm. David said, oh, the body was so wonderfully created. So if he had to build a body, what would you say he'd have to start with? Well, he'd have to start with the bones. You'd have to have something to put the flesh on. So if you go from the bones, say we're going to start at the bottom from the toes. Of course, you have read and studied. the big toe. If it wasn't for the big toe, your body wouldn't be stabilized when you walk. You would walk like a duck, because the toe is really what stabilizes the body. Then you go from the toes, you go from the bones of the foot, you go to the ankle. From the ankle, you go to the knee where you have the flexibility to move here. Then you go to the hips where you can bend down. From the hips, you go to the backbone straight up into the skull. Then you go back down, you go back to the shoulders, rotate a cup, you go back to the elbow, you go back to the wrist, and you go back to your fingers. Shirley was watching television a week or so ago, and I happened to look over what she had been sewing there to the sofa next to it, and I went over and I stooped and I picked up a pin, a little stick pin, and I brought it over. She said, "What do you have?" "Oh, yeah, I dropped it on the floor when you were sewing the other day, but if you step on it, you know it." So, but you think that hand picked up that little pin, look at that pin, and dropped it over. And sometimes she said, "Daddy, I need you to thread the needle for me." So she gave me the needle, take the thread, pull it right through. "How did you do that?" I said, "Well, your fingers. See how your fingers are crazy, how God created these things." Then you go back, you go to the breastbone. Of course, you have to go under the breast. You have your heart. You have your lungs on your breastbone. Your right side, you have your liver. You have your gallbladder, your appendix. You go on this side, you have your pancreas. You have your spleen, everything to one. So when God starts, He makes the foundation. And what I'm trying to say is that the foundation we need in life, we need even a marriage. A marriage has just to be started on a good foundation. You have to be true to one another. You got to know the other. A lot of people say, well, marriage, 50%. No. Marriage is 100%. It's giving it all. And one of the things you have to do to realize, one of the things that can disrupt a lot is a lie. A lie can throw a marriage in disregard. You got to be true to you got to be almost perfect if you love your wife. I remember, like I told Audrey, and I told her to go with her, the little clerk in Walmart one day. She came over, and we're looking at a computer desk. She came over to tell me the price, and I reached over and I gave Shirley a kiss. And she walked over. She said, how long has this been going on? Oh, Shirley said, about 60 years. She said, how do y'all do it? One day at a time, sweetie. One day at a time. So all these things, I mean, it happens for a reason. And like I said, the foundation is something else. But let's go back to the Word. We know the Word was of God, and anything was created by Him. And you know, Adam and Eve was created, and when He created Eve, He took a rib from Adam, and He created Eve. And boy, Adam was one happy dude. And then what He told him, go to the earth, replenish the earth, multiply. And boy, they did. But then it goes down when God said He was grieved. Why He was grieved? For what He saw man had become to. I mean, all the sins and things more violent things. He said He's going to have to put an end to it. He's going to wipe them from the face of the earth. So when He's searching, He found one man, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. When the way He talked to Noah, He told Noah exactly what He wanted him to do. Build him a barge, a ship, or whatever you want to call it. And he wanted it made out of gopher wood. And it was 450 foot long, 75 feet wide, so many feet tall. Told him exactly how he wanted it. And after it was done, He told me He wanted it to be pitched in and out. Now, if you don't know what pitch means, waterproof it. So you imagine the time, it must have took 10, 15, 20 years. We had to take all this pitching and pitch the inside the waterproof and pitch the outside. But they finally got it done. It took Noah 120 years. But Noah listened to the word. Now, the next one the word spoke with was Abraham. You know, like Noah, Abraham learned to obey God's laws, while again the people of the world were worshiping idols and living far from God and God's ways. Abraham was one of the few who didn't take part in the pagan ways. When he was about 75 years old, God told him to move his family to another country. Now, what do you think if you read the Bible right and you see Noah? He was rich. He had all kinds of herds, cattle, sheep, goats. He had dedicated herdsmen that went out in the field, took care of his flocks. He had lived close to a nice watering hole, and besides that, he had a beautiful wife. Her name was Sarah. And well, the Lord said, I got it made. Boy, what is it? And God wanted me to move. Why should I move? Man, I got everything right here. But Abraham listened to God. God promised him that if he obeys his instructions, Abraham will become the father of the most famous nation on the earth. And within that time, the nation will enjoy some of the very special blessings. And for years, the United States of America, England have enjoyed these blessings. Now, because of our hard-headedness, it's coming to an end. Of course, God told us in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, he would do such if you would do such. But if you didn't do such, well, it was going to turn the tables on. We'd lose the pride of our power. That's almost shown. America was a giant at one time. Now it walks around like a little bitty mouse, afraid to even squeak anymore. But that was all. The good life was promised to Abraham. Besides his wife Sarah, Abraham took his nephew Lot's wife, shepherd, to take care of the flocks and sheep and herdsmen, to handle the herds of cattle. It was no small task for Abraham to move his family into possession to a distant land. Now, the next example I'm going to give you is of Moses of the burning bush. Do you remember when Moses walked up and he saw this bush burning, and he looked at the bush, he said, looked back, he said, man, they say the bush is burning, sparks flying all over, but the bush is still there. So he walked a little bit closer. Then the word came, and the voice told him, oh, Moses, you're on holy ground. Take those sandals off, you're on holy ground. Of course, Moses listened to God, listened to the word, and he did a lot of things that God wanted him to do. God wrote the 10 Commandments to the stones and presented them to Moses, which Moses presented to the Israelites, which is a fabulous story. He fed them in a manna for 40 years. He opened the Red Sea so they could pass through. So Moses is one of the examples, again, of the word dealing with. Now, let's turn to the New Testament. Let's go to the Apostle Paul. If you remember right, before the Apostle Paul was created, he was called Saul. Of course, he had it against God's church. He played havoc. He had people thrown in prison. He had them beaten. He's trying to disrupt God's church. And then one day on the way to Damascus, the word knocked Saul down and converted him to his way of life, personally taught him. And then Saul became in my book, one of the greatest apostles. He wrote 14 books of the Bible. And the books I really enjoy reading, I read back 2 or 3 times, is the 13th chapter, the love chapter. And you go, it intrigues me each time you read the resurrection chapter in Corinthians 1:15. But you get these things to heart. And Paul, through the years, he said, he knew he was nothing, he'd never be nothing without Christ. He said, the things I want to do, that's the things I don't do. But the things I don't want to do, that's the things I do. So Paul told you, he still had human nature. That human nature was rising in him. But he said, who could free him from that human nature? Christ. Paul stayed steadily with Christ because he knew when he preached the resurrection that he would have a part in the world tomorrow. And he suffered so many things. Paul was shipwrecked. He whipped 3 times with a cat of 9 tails. He was thrown into prison. He was even double-crossed by his own brethren. He went hungry. And all this, he said, he'd done to gain Christ. One day he'd be with Christ in that resurrection. Now, when I started, I said, we know we're going to have beginnings. So let's go to our second beginning. In Luke 1:26, please. I'm a little slow because this Bible I keep in my briefcase when I'm writing and studying. I have the other Bible in the house, so sometimes I got to find my way through this Bible. I guess I'm going to have to take it out of the briefcase and bring it in. was 126. Now in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. The virgin's name was Mary. And having come in, the angel said to her, "Rejoice, highly favored one. The Lord is with you. Blessed art thou among women." When she saw him, she was troubled at his saying. And she considered what manner of greeting was this. She didn't quite understand what he meant, of course. Then the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Highest. And the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David. And he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom there shall be no end." Then Mary said to the angel, "How can this be, since I'm still a virgin, since I know not a man?" And the angel said, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the highest will overshadow you. Therefore also the Holy One who is born will be called the Son of God." So this was the second beginning when Jesus Christ was born from the Virgin Mary. He must have been a beautiful baby. I look at pictures of babies, of course. Of course, Mary must have been following God's laws to the letter. Of course, she must have been observing the Sabbath, of course, as the laws of clean and unclean food, praying. It was hard to be singled out. Of course, the Bible don't say how old she was. You can only speculate. She had to be in her 20s, early 30s, because Jesus Christ was only the firstborn, because in the Bible that Jesus Christ had brothers and sisters, at least 3 or 4 brothers, at least 2 sisters. The Bible consistently says that. So now let's go ahead and fast forward to Jesus when Jesus is 12 years old. If you remember when he was 12 years old, well, they'd come every year to celebrate the Passover in Jerusalem on the way back home. They would travel together with a family because you had to be careful there wouldn't be no robbers along the way. And so in evening time, it's come before darkness, before they had to settle out a meal for supper. And they went on, the children would know Jesus. So the children ran around the campground back and forth, Mary, know Jesus. So next morning, they hustled back, went back to Jerusalem, and after 3 days, they found Jesus in the midst of the linemen, the doctors, the people, and he was answering and asking questions. And Mary approached him and said, "Son, why have you done this so?" He said, "Mother, don't you know I should be about my Father's business?" Of course, Joseph and Mary didn't realize what he was saying, but Jesus knew what he was saying. Okay, let's fast forward again one more time. A wedding feast. Now, this wedding feast must invite, in Gretna, must have half of the town of Gretna. Why do they say that? If you look through the Bible, they tell you when he made water into wine, he made at least 100 to 120 gallons. That's a lot of wine. Boy, I like wine. That would last me a long time. But he had turned the water into wine, and of course, one of the servants took a dip and brought it over to the governor of the feast, and he tasted it. He said, "Oh, boy." So he called over the groom, and he said, "Man," he said, "most of the time at the wedding feast, they put out the good wine first, and everybody had a taste. They'd come out with the cheap wine, the Ripple or the Burgundy or the $5 bottle wine. But you said the best for last." Let's turn to John 4:46, please. this is another miracle that Jesus Christ did. So Jesus came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. And when he heard that Jesus... That must be wrong. I picked up the wrong scripture here. Well, let's go to Matthew 14:14, please. And when Jesus went out, he saw a multitude, and he was moved with compassion for them, and he healed the sick. When it came to evening, his disciples came to him, saying, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Send the multitudes away, that they go into the village and buy themselves food." But Jesus said unto them, "They do not need to go away. You can give them something to eat." And they said to him, "We have only 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, "Well, bring them to me." Then he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave to the multitudes. So they all ate and were filled, and they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments that remained. For that's another miracle of Jesus. It wasn't long before that Jesus was going to give the disciples. They found the place that was going to celebrate the Passover service. Of course, you know, as we're going to the Passover service, he washed the disciples' feet, and he went on, and he said he knew there was one in the disciple that was going to betray him. And he sat down at the meal, and the other brethren said, "Well, who's going to be this one that's going to betray you, Lord?" And he said, "The one that I'm going to give the sop to." So he took a morsel of bread, and he dipped it in the stew, and he passed it on to Judas. And he told Judas, "Do what you have to do, but do it quickly." But the other disciple didn't get in their mind what Jesus was trying to convey to them. So it wasn't that long before, the Roman soldiers came in after that and arrested Jesus. In the mock trial, and they brought him before Pilate, back and forth and back and forth. And Pilate said he didn't see nothing wrong in Jesus Christ. When he said, the Passover service, this time of the year, he let one criminal go. And why didn't he let Barabbas? He had Barabbas or Jesus Christ. But the people insisted with a loud voice, "Crucify him, the Christ." So they let Barabbas go. So Jesus Christ, of course, was one to be crucified. And you imagine when they beat him going down the street, when they first took his clothes off, and then they took made him a crown of thorns. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the soldier taking a crown of thorns and jamming it on your head? If you feel your head, you have just a little bit skin, but you don't have, it goes against your skull. Now, Shirley had a rose bush in the yard, and I used to when it's time to trim it, take my pliers and trim it, and try and be very careful with leather gloves, but every now and then, I still stick it through. And that thorn could stick in me. Oh boy, that hurts. So you have to be a little bit more careful. You even take that thing and jamming it down on Jesus' head. It makes me think of the Passover season, the things that Jesus Christ suffered for us. But that wasn't the only thing. If you go through the scripture, you see how he was beaten convincingly 2, 3, half a dozen times. And the whip that they used, it was a whip that was, the handle of it was of pure leather where they wore. It was about at least 12, 15 inches long, I'll say about 1 inch in diameter. And they had 9 fingers. That's what they call a cat of 9 tails. Well, each one, they started off with, say, 30 inches long. And then it'd go 31 inches on the very tips of these fingers, these 9 tails, they'd weave in a little bone, like a turkey neck bone, or a little piece of steel. When they hit a man, they would all hit him, but they would hit him in different places. They cut into the flesh. But the fellow that was doing it, the fellow to be there doing it, he knew exactly how much he could go, where he could beat him almost to death, but still the man would be alive. But he knew, and he suffered those things. It makes me come to heart the things I know. I say, boy, it makes me tremble when I'm in the Passover scene, when I sit there and I read this part of the Bible, how he was beaten. And I mean, of course, you go to Isaiah tell you he's beaten more than any man. You know, he suffered for us. And when he brought him down, crucified and beat him back and forth like that, and then forced to carry a stick and beat so much he couldn't carry the stick anymore. They reached out, they picked Simon out of the crowd and brought him over and put the stick on Simon. Simon brought it up to Golgotha, and he brought him and laid him on that stick. Can you imagine? Can you look through the forest and they're putting their hands and taking like a railroad spike and driving it through your hand and through your feet? And then when they raised that stake up, the hole was pre-dug. Now, I have put down many fence posts for patches and stuff. After you put those fence posts down, you know you have a packer. You go around and you pack this to make sure the solid the post won't shake. Can you imagine when they picked that stake up and they dropped it in that hole? All that pain, that stuff on that hand and their feet, excruciating pain, and Jesus cried out. Of course he cried out. He's human. And then when he took the stick up and put it up, then 2 or 3 of them got around with the packer. Then every time they pack and he hit that stick, the thing would go up and vibrate through his human body again, because he was still human. He felt every bit of it. The crucifixion is something that, it makes you wonder. But he went through this all, and he died on the cross. He died on the stake, and he said, deliver him to the Father's hand. And he said, it's the end. It's finished. And it wasn't long before Joseph of Arimathea went to Pilate and claimed the body, and he agreed with them he could have the body. Took him down, of course, and he brought him to the tomb where nobody had been laying before. They laid him in there, when they dressed him with the grave clothes, and of course they rolled the stone. But like he said, he used to leave the people a sign, but 3 days and 3 nights, he'd be resurrected. He'd be back resurrected from the dead. So on Saturday evening, right before sunset, he was resurrected. And now the same Jesus Christ is sitting at the throne with God the Father. And when he's seeing you going through trial, and you tell, yeah, I know exactly what he's going. He was on this earth for 33 and a half years, preached the gospel for 3 years, and he was human. But now he's God, our Spirit. He's our Savior. Now, I told you, and we said we was going to have the beginnings. You said we're going to have the thing. Yep, we're going to have a third beginning. Maybe you might not remember your third beginning, but I remember my third beginning. We got in the church, of course, with Church of God, and we went to right here on Franklin Avenue. There was the Lions Club. We went there for years. And from our beginning, you know, we counseled Mr. Hargrove and Mr. Jenkins about being baptized. And we were waiting for when he thought we were ready, of course. One Sabbath, he got me, my wife Shirley, my brother Roy, and Jerry Tucker and his wife. And he called us over and said, tomorrow, it's going to time for you. It'll be baptism. So that's the third beginning. So he said, we had to meet at his house at early evening, and it was cold that day. Like I saw, I remember it. It was in the 40s. And it was somewhere in Gretna here. Now I can't pinpoint exactly where it was. But the trough they had made, it was a portable trough. Now, it was made of canvas, and it was put together with pipe to hold it up. And it was filled with water from the hot water heater, of course, but it was built on the outside. It was heated, but not really warm on the outside. And the water it wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. And it was 40-something degrees. Well, I remember being baptized, and as soon as you got out, of course, the hands were laid upon you, and then you was given the towel, wrapped around a towel and changed clothes. And I remember driving home that evening, my wife and I remember when we got home, our children was excited because they was new in the church. My oldest was 12, my youngest was 6, 3 girls and a boy. And we told them exactly where it on. Well, you know, that's Sunday. Monday morning is a work day. And at that time, I was working at Union Carbide, and I worked there for 29 years. And I said, you know, working here 29 years. I was into one unit, was assigned to one, being a fellow from Raceland. His name was Zion Zerang. They used to call him Zorro, but he's my fitter, so we stayed together. And that was for a year, so we didn't have to worry about, nobody about working the Sabbath. And then one Friday, the head of the department came out and said, you know, on Monday morning we're starting a shutdown. And the shutdown is going to be 12 hours a day for 10 days, 12 hours a day for 10 days. Boy, it came to me, whoa. So that week, you know, I was on the edge all week, nervous, but, you know, I never had approached what I was going to ask the man. So it went on. I kept putting it off, human nature. I just put it back. But well, Friday at noon, we had an announcement. It came out, the whole group of people, and said, you know, the shutdown starts Monday morning. Be ready. And, boy, I let him get away again. Boy, about 3:30 or 4 o'clock, I saw him coming across the unit. And I walked over there. I said, Mr. Cruz, can I ask you a question? He said, well, your name was on the top of your hat, Nicholas. I said, yeah, well, Nicholas, what's your problem? I said, well, I'd like to get off early this afternoon. It was Friday. And they said, well, do you have a good reason to get off? I said, well, yes, Mr. Cruz, I observed the Sabbath, and I'd like to be home before the Sabbath starts. Well, he said, well, he had his clipboard. He wrote down, Nicholas, off an hour early, whatever. And he said, now, remember, now we work Saturday and Sunday now. I said, whoa. I said, that's the problem, Mr. Cruz. This Sabbath lasts for 24 hours. He said, well, you're trying to tell me you want to get off, you won't be off all day tomorrow. I didn't know what he was going to say. I said, yes, sir. I said, I observe the Sabbath 24 hours, sunset to sunset. Surprisingly, Mr. Cruz put his hand on my shoulder. He said, young man, don't ever let anybody talk you out of that. Don't never let anybody change your mind. Keep your Sabbath. So, of course, I was off that Saturday. Went back. He said, oh, we work Sunday morning. I said, oh, yes, I'll be here Sunday. Of course, Monday morning, had the little truck comes around. Our general foreman, the steward, and the foreman, they all came up here. We had a safety meeting. And he said, before we walked off here, Nicholas, come over. I said, yes, sir, Mr. Facine, he was the general foreman. He said, I see you got off an hour early Friday, and you was off all day Saturday. He said, what would you, I told him the reason. Well, he said, well, if Mr. Cruz okayed it, it's okay with me too. So the steward and the foreman said, well, Jerry, why did you just wait Saturday and take the money and give it to the church? I said, it don't work like that. I said, that's holy time. I said, when you take a Sabbath, it's 24 hours, it's holy time. So I worked there, like I said, for 29 years and never had any more problem with facing the Sabbath. Now, I've seen people leave the church, you know. I've seen a minister left the church and he went back. He was a minister, went to Ambassador College, and he decided he didn't want to be a minister any longer, took a job driving truck. Then I've seen another minister who was a Baptist minister when he came into church. Him and his wife stayed in the church for years. Of course, when they split up, I heard years later that they went back to the Baptist church. And I've seen a man and a woman that both were ordained, a deacon and then a deaconess and an elder. And I've seen now they've turned their back on the church. I've seen going through Walmart, some places where you see some people, they see you coming, they know you, but they'll go a different way. Then you have some people that they'd be glad to come and talk to you and ask you how everything is going. Well, that happens. You know, when God tells you to take on this stuff, he says there's no way out. No way you're going to back out. So let's go to Luke 9:62, please. Luke 9:62. In 9:62, Jesus said to him, no one putting his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God. So it said once you've been baptized and you put your hand on that plow, you put your hand on that way of life, that's the way you have to go. There's no turning back. That's the way it happens. That's the way you have to go. Well, I was fortunate. When I was 12 years old, 13 years old, my daddy bought a farm. We live right in the middle of Hornville. He bought a farm about a quarter mile upriver from where we lived. We got to move there. The nice farmhouse, it was big. It had 4 bedrooms, 2 downstairs, 2 upstairs, a very large dining room, living room combined, and then the kitchen was on this side. The house had 2 doors, a fireplace would go on heat both sides of the house, 2 bedrooms on that side. Well, in that kitchen, that's the one that's where I learned to cook. That's where my mother used to say, "Come here, boy, stir this pot," or something like that. That's where I learned to cook. And it wasn't long. My daddy was a pipe fitter. He worked at Shell Oil Company, and he worked from 7 to 4. He'd leave home 6 o'clock in the morning, get home at 4:30, and he bought this big farm. If you measured across at the beginning of the property, it was 183 foot long. If you measure with going down there, it's 1 mile and 2/10 deep. That's how long. That's how big the property was. I don't know why he wanted it, but he bought it anyway. 22 acres, $2,200. So we was wondering how was going to work this property, and a Negro brother from the same street we lived in, Hornville, Mr. Frank Antoine, came over. I guess he must have been in his 60s, about my size, and he's talking with my dad. Him and him conferred back and forth. He told Mr. Leon, if you supplied the seeds and the fertilizer, I have a mule and I'll plow and I'll bring over and I'll break up the property, and whatever we grow, we sharecrop. Oh, my dad was so happy, yeah, we was going to sharecrop. So he started plowing that week. Said, come to Saturday, we didn't have school. My mother fixed a bottle of water, put in a little denim sack. Said, bring this to Mr. Frank. He's plowing in the back. He might need some water. It was in the springtime. So my older sister, 2 years older than me, her name was Dot. We took it, we bring it to Mr. Frank. And right where he was plowing, they had a nice willow tree on this side of the property. So we sit the willow tree where he was coming back. When he came back, we brought the water over to him. He brought some water. He said, well, yo, just lay it under the willow tree. So I'd watch him. He'd go down it with the mule board. He'd come back about 100 something. He'd come back around. So when he noticed I kept watching what he was doing. So one day he stopped. Whoa, mule. And he used to call me, my nickname was Yeah. He said, yeah, come see. I came over. He said, how would you like to do some plowing? I said, Mr. Frank, I don't know if I can do that plowing. That don't look easy. He said, well, I'm gonna walk right alongside of you. He said, if I see you're gonna mess up, he said, I'll grab hold of that plow. And I'll do it with you. I said, okay. So we went, we had money. Of course, a couple of times, and he grabbed it, straightened me out, went back, come back. But the third or fourth round, I said, whoa, mule. He said, now what's wrong now? I said, I don't believe I'm going to do any more plowing. He said, why? I mean, that's work. That's work. So I back off. So that was a good lesson. But Jesus said, once you put your hand to that plow, you have to keep on going. In life, as things come to things that you have to overcome, you have to grow. And it reminds me a lot of times, and I know, when I was feeling and I was making a mistake, I know Jesus is right there grabbing me, but he come on back this way. This is the way you walk. This is the way you walk you in it. So while we were having our medical problems, we had got calls from different brethren and from the family. One of the brethren in the church sent me this card here. I really like this card, and I keep a diary every day. I put exactly with the temperature in the morning, with the temperature in the afternoon, what went on that day, if we walked that day, if I made gumbo, if I made stew, whatever. Went to the doctor, and things I wanted to really show up, well, I put a little highlighter, put a little star, and when it come back page, I said, what's something I want to look at again. Well, in this card it says, when you draw close to God with your faith and with your prayers and with your heart, God will draw close to you with his protection, with his guidance, with his love. This is found in James 4:8. And may God's love uplift you, his care strengthen you, and his blessing be with you while you're recuperating. What a wonderful card. Like I said, I keep this in my diary, and like I said, I read it over it daily. Now I'd like to read a poem. I know you might have heard it before. It's the one of the footsteps in the sand. One night I dreamed I was walking along the beach, which the Lord. Many scenes from my life flashed across the sky. In each scene, I noticed footprints in the sand. Sometimes there were 2 sets of footprints in the sand. Other times, there's only one. They bothered me because I noticed that during the low point periods of my life, when I was suffering from anguish or sorrow or defeat, I could see only one set of footprints. So I said to the Lord, you promised me, Lord, that if I followed you, you'd walk with me always. Now, if you go to Hebrews 13:5, it will tell you at the end of the verse, it will tell you, he promised he will never leave or forsake you. Now, you can take that to the bank. And that's good 24/7. He will never leave or forsake you. But I've noticed that through the trying periods of my life, there has been one set of footprints in the sand. Why, when I need you most, have you not been there for me? And the Lord replied sincerely, the years when you have seen only one set of footprints, my child, is when I carried you. Can you realize that? A lot of times I know you had to carry me because I'm only human, and I know he had to carry me. In closing, brethren, all I have to say now is remember, like in Philippians, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Take that to heart. In closing, brethren, have a great Sabbath, and may God bless.